In the not-too-distant future, researchers are able to rewrite the measles virus so that it aids in the treatment of illnesses rather than the transmission of new ones. Nevertheless, they are unable to contain the virus, which spreads to most of the populace and turns them into violent mutants known as people-eating dark seekers who are vulnerable to sunshine. New York City is now such a desolate wasteland, 3 years after the initial breakout, that zoo animals are now allowed to roam the streets without restriction. Only Robert, a retired Army virologist who spends his days with his dog Sam, has survived. Every time they go hunting, Sam aids Robert in finding the prey, and he drives whichever automobile he feels like driving that day to chase the prey around the streets. Robert is usually armed and a skilled marksman, but he also has a good heart and gives the meat to the lion families who are also hunting when he spots them. In order to avoid being outside as the sun sets, he also sets an alarm on his watch. Robert immediately returns to the house he has been residing in since the outbreak began, which has been fortified to the hilt. To prevent the dark seekers from smelling him, Robert may close all the doors and windows and always makes sure to bleach the front steps. Robert keeps plenty of food and videos of previous newscasts at this home, which enables him to pretend to be following a familiar routine in order to maintain his sanity. Additionally, he converses with Sam, enjoys music, and performs routine tasks like giving his dog a bath and preparing meals for the two of them. He hides in the bathtub at night with Sam and some weapons, and the sound of the dark seekers outside causes him to think about his family no matter how hard he tries to divert himself from them. Since the island was the epicenter of the outbreak, the government opted to block it off. As masses of people rushed to flee, panic swept the streets. Sam, who was only a puppy at the time, his wife Zoe, their daughter Marley, and Robert hurried to pick them up. Robert didn't accompany them because he wanted to stay on the island to study the virus and discover a cure, which infuriated Zoe. He wanted them to leave the island to stay with a relative. They got into a fight over it, and Robert almost crashed the car as a result. Even now, Robert still believes there might be a cure. He goes to the lab in his basement every morning after working out with Sam to keep track of his research. Sam can't go down there because she might contract the disease, but Robert is unaffected because he is immune. Robert has been testing the various serums he has created on the caged rats in the lab that are infected with the virus. All of them were unsuccessful until Robert saw one of the rats was truly improving one morning. He can now proceed to the next round of the study, but he will require a human to do so. Then, in an effort to maintain the appearance of a regular schedule, Robert and Sam go to the video store, where Robert has set up a number of mannequins. He converses with them as if they were old friends, always watches the film he took before choosing another, and makes out that one of the mannequins is trying to flirt with him. Robert assures Sam that he'll return the flirtation one day. The two then go to Robert's vegetable gardens in parks to pick some to take home. They chose a new residence to visit each day and keep a map of all the ones they've already been to. While they are able to acquire new food sources as a result, they also discover cleaning supplies and medical equipment that were left behind during the battle against the pandemic. Robert occasionally discovers other incredibly melancholy remnants of the individuals who have resided there, including the bodies themselves or even abandoned nurseries. The final step of Robert's regimen involves going to the South Street Seaport to broadcast a recording inviting any survivors to meet him there once he fills up the car with gas. He occupies his time while waiting in various ways, such as by playing golf on aircraft owned by the Air Force. Sam and Robert start following a deer around the streets one afternoon after Sam sees it running about. The deer runs into an old, gloomy structure in a panic when it encounters a blocked road. Sam follows it inside, which worries Robert because it might be the ideal hiding location for dark seekers. Robert has to enter as well because Sam won't come out when she's called, and he makes an effort to be as quiet as possible to avoid drawing attention to himself. Robert is abruptly startled by some terrible noises, but he won't go without Sam, so he takes a minute to gather his courage and cover his flashlight with his hand before walking farther inside. Robert finds a body behind some furniture after following a trail of blood upstairs. At first, Robert fears the worst until realizing it's not Sam, it's deer. Robert encounters a group of dark seekers near a wall as he searches further. Fortunately, he responds quickly and moves back, keeping his torch away from them. Sam is finally discovered by Robert when he turns around and is hiding beneath a desk, reluctant to come out because she is afraid of something. A dark seeker suddenly springs up behind Robert at that same moment. When the other dark seekers start pursuing him, Robert shoots him right away and tells the dog to go down a different hallway before fleeing with Sam. Robert has a strategy in mind, so when the dark seekers get up to him, he goes to the window and leaps out. This causes the sunlight to kill the two creatures that fall with him to the ground and keeps the others inside. Sam and Robert are reunited, and Robert sets up a unique trap utilizing an old canvas and a vehicle on a bridge near the building's entrance. Sam is told not to accompany him for this one in order to prevent infection, and he then takes some of his own blood and spills it on the canvas. When a dark seeker approaches to feed on the blood, the trap goes off, causing the truck to crash and dragging the dark seekers out of the canvas. A second dark seeker, who is thought to be the group's alpha, emerges from the structure to howl at Robert with apparent rage but immediately retreats when the sun starts to burn him. A little while later, Robert has the female dark seeker he'd captured in his lab and is tying her to a table to test the treatment he's been working on. After confirming she is infected with the virus with UV light, he notices she has a butterfly tattoo. After a few seconds of silence, Robert starts injecting the dark seeker with the serum he made from the successful rat. Suddenly, she starts wailing and fumbling with her chains. The dark seeker experiences a brief moment of panic before passing out and having all of her vital indicators display as 0. To keep her alive, Robert administers a second injection right away, but he can't stop shaking the furniture in frustration at the failure. He then places the dark seeker behind a glass door and records his day's accomplishments, noting that alpha male purposefully exposed himself to sunlight. This leads him to believe that their core survival instincts are being disregarded as a result of impaired brain function or a lack of food, and that societal degeneration is now complete. Robert is reminded of the breakout day once more due of the irrational behavior of the onlookers. Many ships were leaving the island, but only those with clearance could pass, and individuals didn't appreciate being kept in quarantine, especially those who had children and pleaded with others for assistance. The army had closed the highways, but the troops were under orders to lead Robert and his family to safety, so they continued on foot. The military tested them at the harbor with a scanner to make sure they weren't infected. Marley passed but Zoe failed. When Robert made a scene and pulled rank to get a second scan, the mother and daughter panicked because they didn't want to be separated. Because they were an army family and Zoe passed the test this time, they were allowed to depart on a chopper. Zoe and Marley decided to leave Sam with him so that she could protect him, but Robert insisted on staying and bid them farewell. Marley waved goodbye by making a butterfly with her palms as the chopper took off. Back in the present, Robert and Sam continue about their daily business, but as they prepare to leave for the day and head home, something unexpected occurs. A mannequin is located close to the bridge, and Robert is certain that he did not place it there. Robert, who is experiencing hallucinations, shoots at the mannequin in an attempt to disprove its reality. The mannequin simply falls to the ground. Then Robert starts firing wildly at the air because he believes he can hear whispering going on around him. Robert chooses to investigate the mannequin because nothing seems to be happening, but as he gets closer, a car crashes and he is bound by a rope. It turns out the dark seekers duplicated his trap. Sam is struck in the head and collapses as blood starts to trickle on the ground. Soon after, Robert is awakened by the alarm on his watch. Robert cuts the rope with a knife since Sam is still there and it is going to get dark. He hurts his leg when he hits the ground, so he now has to drag his body through the earth to get away. Sam first pursues him, but she stops when she hears a building nearby start to growl. The alpha arrives there with a pack of diseased dogs, and he releases them loose to pursue Robert. However, when they nearly get injured by the last of the sun, the dogs retreat. Just as the sun begins to drop, forcing the hounds to attack, Robert is forced to stand up and sprint to his car to get a rifle. While Robert battles the others, battling against a beast, he manages to properly take his rifle and kills them all one by one as one of them jumps on Sam and bites her. Sam is in pain, so Robert puts Sam's needs before his own in order to pick her up and bring her to the lab, where he administers his serum. Then he holds her in his arms while singing to her, but Sam is gradually beginning to change. Robert is so distraught that he is forced to put her to death despite her protests, ignoring them until she passes away. Robert buries Sam in the garden after giving her a dignified send-off and then tries to resume his daily activities. He consumes a lot of medication to attempt to block out the discomfort, and when he visits the video store, he ultimately strikes up a conversation with the flirtatious mannequin after making a vow to his closest buddy to do so. Naturally, the mannequin doesn't respond, and this ultimately pushes Robert over the edge. Robert, who is enraged and miserable, drives out at night to trample some dark seekers as payback. The alpha commands the others to attack Robert after he manages to kill some of them. They even scale a light post to cause it to collapse onto Robert's car. The dark seekers then tip the vehicle over in an attempt to trap Robert inside, but when the alpha breaks through the window and gets inside, an unexpected UV light blinds everyone, forcing the dark seekers to retreat. Robert isn't feeling well because he banged his head when the car overturned, but he notices that someone else is driving off with him. Robert responds by giving them his address and requesting that they make sure they aren't being followed before he passes out when the individual asks where to take him. Robert has another dream about his family that night. The authorities blasted the bridge after the helicopter took off to isolate the island. When others attempted to get aboard one of the helicopters, it lost control and collided with the one carrying Robert's family, killing everyone on board instantly. The following morning, Robert is awakened by the sound of an animated television show. After having his legs wounds sewn up, the man nevertheless feels uneasy and gets a rifle before entering the kitchen, where he briefly believes he sees his family. This is actually Anna and her son Ethan, who were the ones who saved him the previous evening. Robert lays down the rifle and joins them while listening to Anna's story because she has already made breakfast. When they heard Robert's message, they halted beside the harbor. They are from Maryland. They are traveling to Vermont because there is a secure area populated by survivors there, and the cold should keep the virus at bay. Infuriated, Robert tosses his plate on the floor and tells Anna that he doesn't believe it and believes everyone is dead. Robert heads upstairs to spend a moment by himself after realizing how close he is to losing it. Once he is calmed down, he rejoins the group and uses the opportunity to quote a line from the film to reassure Ethan that he is not malicious. Robert admits that he enjoys that movie, and it is clear that he empathizes with the ogre because he lacks friends as well. They have a brief conversation after Robert thanks Anna for the rescue. According to Anna, Red Cross evacuation ships leaving from San Paulo were not intended to be long-term vessels. When the Navy broke down, Anna's crew went back to the beach to look for supplies when their boat was stolen. Although 5 members of her crew were immune, the Dark Seekers nevertheless managed to murder them. Robert refuses to accompany her, saying he prefers to remain at Ground Zero and continue his research for a cure. She still plans to travel to Vermont. Later, when they return to the spot where they discovered Robert the previous evening, Robert inspects the trap and notes that it was built using the materials they removed from his own trap. The Dark Seekers aren't supposed to have higher brain function, which means they shouldn't be able to plot, hate, or love, thus Robert doesn't want to believe they did this. Anna speculates that the Dark Seekers might be changing. After that, they take Ethan to a fountain for some fun, and when Robert overhears Ethan lamenting the chilly water, he has an idea. The group goes back to the house, where Robert covers the female Dark Seeker in a thick layer of ice in the hope that a change in body temperature may make the serum more effective. When Anna looks about the lab, she finds a number of images demonstrating Robert's previous attempts to test the serum on humans, all of which were unsuccessful. When Anna discovers that Ethan had dozed off on the couch, Robert offers to take him to his daughter's old bed. Robert explains that his daughter was named after Bob Marley, a musician Anna had never heard of, and shares some family history with her after Anna discovers his family photos. Robert, who finds this unbelievable, tells her he was inspired by Bob Marley since he continued to perform even after being shot in his own home, and then plays her his favorite CD. Once more Anna tries to persuade Robert to accompany them as Robert shuts all the windows as darkness falls. Robert questions Anna about how she knows there is a colony, and when Anna responds that God informed her, Robert loses it. She is yelled at as he argues that there is no God because most of humanity has perished and the remainder has turned into monsters. When they hear some noises outside, their chat is abruptly cut short. It turns out that the Dark Seekers have come here after following the scent of the blood he shed the previous night. While Robert puts on the exterior lights, Anna hurries to retrieve Ethan, but the Dark Seekers simply jump on them and obliterate them. Robert then detonates many bombs he had concealed just in case, wiping out the first horde. Robert then goes upstairs to check for Anna when the Alpha suddenly jumps on him. Robert attacks the Alpha with a screwdriver that he finds on the floor as the two of them start to battle, but the Alpha barely registers the blow and is thrown back below. When the Alpha manages to escape the gunfire and shelter in another room, Robert shoots a gas canister to produce an explosion. Robert takes advantage of the opportunity to steal a weapon he had hidden among the umbrellas. Once more, the Alpha flees upstairs, and Robert pursues him while firing continuously until he witnesses the Alpha leaping out of the window. Then, while a Dark Seeker devastates the room's ceiling, he rushes in search of Anna and Ethan and discovers them hiding beneath some furniture. The monster is about to attack Robert when Robert rushes in, grabs the gun from a table nearby, and fires at the monster. When Robert hears a disturbance outside and sees that the Alpha has returned with other Dark Seekers, the group immediately flees to the lab to shelter. Robert and Anna are astonished to learn the female test subject is improving as they climb the building to enter via the hole their friend dug. This indicates that the treatment is effective, but before they can weigh their alternatives, the Dark Seekers show up at the lab, so Robert has to shut the glass door between them. The Dark Seekers don't pay attention to him when he attempts to explain how he can help them, they just keep banging on the door. When the Alpha also shows up, he uses his great power to shatter the glass, and then he draws what Robert immediately identifies as a butterfly, precisely like the woman's tattoo. Robert is finally able to comprehend that the Dark Seekers do have emotions because they are here to save their friend rather than kill him, because this makes him think of Marley. Without listening to Anna's objections, Robert drops his weapon and removes the woman from the machines before dragging her through the glass door. Robert grabs a syringe and injects the woman with some medication, causing her to awaken, as the Dark Seekers snarl furiously at him. Before scooping her up to go, the Alpha quickly brushes his forehead with hers in celebration of their reunion. The only response Robert receives when he apologizes is another growl. Robert agrees to depart with Anna and Ethan now that he knows the city belongs to the Dark Seekers group. The following morning, they set out towards Vermont, but not before Anna records a new message informing any survivors who might be listening where to reach the safe colony.